You're floating in complete darkness, suspended in warm liquid that cushions your massive form. Your heart beats slowly, steadily, pumping blood through a body that's already larger than most cars. You can't see anything, but you don't need to. The rhythmic thrum of another heartbeat echoes through the water around you. A sound so deep and powerful, it vibrates through your bones. That's your mother's heart, and it's been your constant companion for the past 11 months. You're a fin whale calf, and you're about to be born into an ocean that will test every instinct you don't even know you have yet. Your mother has been carrying you through thousands of miles of open water, diving to depths that would crush most creatures, all while you've been growing inside her. She's eaten almost nothing during this time. Her body has been running on stored fat, burning through reserves she built up over months of feeding in colder waters. She's sacrificed everything to get you to this moment. The pressure around you starts to shift. Your mother's muscles contract, and suddenly you're being pushed forward through a passage that seems impossibly tight. Your massive flippers fold against your body as you're squeezed through, and then, without warning, you're expelled into a world of endless blue. The shock is immediate. Cold water rushes over your skin, and for the first time in your life, you feel the weight of the ocean pressing against you from every direction. But your instincts kick in before panic can set. Your tail flukes, which have been curled up inside your mother, snap straight and begin pumping. You don't think about it. You don't learn it. You just do it. Your massive body, already 20 feet long and weighing as much as an elephant, rockets toward the surface. Your mother swims beside you, her enormous bulk creating a current that helps push you upward. The pressure in your ears builds and then releases as you rise through the water column, chasing a light that grows brighter with every stroke. Then you break the surface, and for the first time, you breathe. Air floods your lungs through blowholes that open automatically. The sensation is overwhelming. You've never felt anything like it. You float there for a moment, your dorsal fin cutting through the waves, learning what it means to exist at the boundary between water and sky. Your mother surfaces beside you, her own breath creating a towering spout of mist that catches the sunlight. She's watching you, waiting to see if you'll figure out what comes next. You're hungry, desperately, frantically hungry. The 11 months inside your mother's womb have left you with enough energy to survive your birth, but not much more. You need food, and you need it now. Your mother positions herself alongside you, and somehow you know what to do. You press against her side, searching for the source of the rich fatty milk that will sustain you through your first year of life. When you find it, the taste is unlike anything you could have imagined. It's thick, creamy, and loaded with fat content that would make human milk seem like water in comparison. You drink as much as you can hold, and then you drink more. Your stomach expands to accommodate the massive quantities of milk you're consuming. In the first few weeks of your life, you'll gain weight at a rate that seems impossible. Hundreds of pounds every single day. Your body stretches and grows, your flippers lengthen, your tail flukes spread wider. The milk isn't just food, it's construction material, building the massive frame that will carry you through decades of ocean life. Your mother never stops moving while you feed. She can't. Staying in one place too long in these warm birthing waters would be a death sentence for both of you. There's not enough food here to sustain her massive body, and there are predators lurking in the depths that would love nothing more than to find a newborn whale calf. So she swims, slowly and steadily, while you learn to keep up. Your tiny tail works frantically to match her pace, and when you fall behind, she circles back, nudging you forward with her massive head. The ocean around you is not the peaceful, empty void you might expect. It's alive with sounds, the clicks and whistles of dolphins in the distance, the haunting songs of other whales, the rumble of distant storms, and underneath it all, the constant whisper of water moving across your skin. Your mother adds her own voice to the symphony. Her calls are so low, so deep, that you feel them more than hear them. These infrasonic calls can travel for hundreds of miles through the water, and she's using them to stay in contact with other fin whales in the area. You try to copy her, opening your mouth and letting out what you think might be a call. What comes out is a squeaky, high-pitched sound that seems pathetic compared to your mother's deep rumbles. She responds anyway, as if your tiny voice is the most important sound in the entire ocean. And to her, it probably is. You're her entire world now. The reason she's swimming thousands of miles without eating. The reason she's burning through fat reserves that took her months to build. As the weeks pass, you grow stronger, faster, more confident. Your dives, which started as brief descents of just a few feet, become longer and deeper. You can hold your breath for several minutes now, following your mother down into the blue-green depths where the sunlight fades to nothing. These aren't hunting dives yet. Your mother isn't feeding. She's teaching you, showing you what the deep ocean looks like, how it feels, how to navigate in 3 dimensions without any landmarks except the distant surface above. During one of these training dives, you encounter something that makes your blood run cold. A shape moves in the darkness below you, massive and predatory. It's an orca, and it's not alone. There are 5 of them, moving in a coordinated pattern that speaks of intelligence and deadly intent. Your mother sees them too, and her entire body language changes. She positions herself between you and the pod of killers, her massive bulk acting as a shield. She doesn't flee. Running would only trigger their hunting instincts. Instead, she holds her ground, using her size and the threat of her powerful tail to keep them at bay. The orcas circle, testing, probing for weakness. They know they can't take down an adult fin whale, but a calf is a different story. You're still small enough, still vulnerable enough to be potential prey. Your mother's calls change, becoming deeper, more urgent. She's not just communicating with you anymore, she's calling for backup. Somewhere in the vast ocean around you, other fin whales hear her distress calls and begin to converge on your location. The first to arrive is a massive bull, probably your father, though you have no way of knowing that. He's even larger than your mother, his scarred hide telling the story of decades of survival in the deep ocean. The orcas reassess the situation. 2 adult fin whales are a formidable force, but they're still considering their options. Then another adult arrives, and another. Within an hour, you're surrounded by a loose group of fin whales, all of them positioned defensively around you. The orcas finally give up, disappearing into the blue depths as suddenly as they appeared. But the encounter has taught you something important. The ocean is not just vast and beautiful, it's dangerous. There are things out there that want to kill you, and only your mother's protection and the solidarity of your species keep you alive. You press closer to her side as the group of whales disperses, each adult returning to their solitary journey through the endless sea. Your mother's milk production reaches its peak during your 3rd month of life. You're consuming hundreds of gallons per day now, growing so fast that your skin sometimes can't keep up. You shed dead skin cells constantly, leaving a trail of debris in the water behind you. Fish follow in your wake, feeding on these scraps, creating a mobile ecosystem centered around your growing body. You've doubled in length and tripled in weight, but you're still just a baby by fin whale standards. That's when your mother makes a decision that will change your life forever. The water around you has been getting colder for weeks now, a gradual change that you've barely noticed. But she has. She's been following temperature gradients and current patterns that are invisible to you, navigating by instincts passed down through millions of years of evolution. The time has come to begin the journey to the feeding grounds, the rich polar waters where she can finally break her months-long fast. The migration begins gradually. Your mother's swimming pattern changes, becoming more purposeful, more directed, instead of the lazy circles and random wandering of the birthing grounds. She's heading somewhere specific. You don't know where, but you follow anyway. What choice do you have? You can't survive without her milk, and she's not stopping to ask your opinion about the travel plans. The journey north is unlike anything you've experienced. The water gets colder with every passing day, but your growing layer of blubber keeps you warm. Your mother pushes the pace, swimming faster and for longer periods between rest breaks. You struggle to keep up at first, your smaller size making every stroke more difficult, but gradually your endurance builds. Your muscles strengthen, your lungs expand, your heart grows more efficient at pumping blood through your enormous body. Other whales join your journey, not traveling together exactly, but following the same ancient routes toward the same destination. You see them in the distance, their spouts marking their location on the horizon. Sometimes they pass close enough for you to hear their calls, deep voices carrying news and information across the miles. Your mother responds to some of these calls, ignoring others. There's a social structure here that you don't understand yet, relationships and hierarchies built over decades of shared migrations. The water is full of life now. Schools of fish flash silver in the depths below you, their movements creating shimmering patterns that catch your eye. Jellyfish drift past like living parachutes, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent light. Seabirds wheel overhead, diving into the water to catch prey that's invisible to you from below the surface. Your mother ignores all of it. She's focused on one thing, reaching the feeding grounds before her energy reserves give out completely. You can sense her desperation now. Her calls have become more frequent, more urgent. Her body, which seemed impossibly massive when you were born, looks leaner now. The fat reserves she's been living on for months are nearly exhausted. She needs to feed, and soon, or she won't be able to produce the milk that's keeping you alive. The race is on, and failure means death for both of you. The water changes again, and this time the shift is dramatic. The deep blue of the open ocean gives way to something richer, greener, more alive. You can taste the difference on your tongue, a metallic, organic flavor that speaks of nutrients and abundance. Your mother's behavior changes too. Her swimming becomes less frantic, more focused. She's testing the water constantly now, opening her mouth to sample what's flowing past her massive jaws. Then you see them, clouds of tiny organisms so dense they turn the water into a living soup. Krill, millions upon millions of them, each one no bigger than your eye, but together forming aggregations that stretch for miles in every direction. Your mother positions herself at the edge of one of these swarms, and for the first time in months, she begins to feed. Watching your mother hunt is like witnessing a carefully choreographed dance performed by a creature the size of a building. She accelerates suddenly, her massive body cutting through the water with surprising grace. Her mouth opens, revealing a cavern large enough to hold a school bus, and the pleated grooves along her throat expand like an accordion. Water rushes in, carrying thousands of krill with it. Then her jaws snap shut, and she uses her tongue, a muscle that weighs as much as a car, to force the water out through her baleen plates, trapping the tiny crustaceans inside. She does this over and over, each feeding lunge bringing in tons of krill-rich water. You watch, fascinated, as your mother transforms from a desperate, starving giant into an efficient feeding machine. The krill don't just float there waiting to be eaten. They form dense balls, spiraling and shifting in patterns that seem almost intelligent. Some dive deeper when they sense your mother approaching. Others scatter in all directions, turning the water into a chaos of tiny panicked bodies. You try to copy her feeding behavior, opening your own mouth and lunging forward, but you have no baleen yet, no filtering system to separate food from water. Everything just flows right back out, leaving you with nothing but a mouthful of seawater. Your mother notices your attempts and responds by nursing you more frequently. You're not ready to feed yourself yet, but she's making sure you get the nutrients you need from her increasingly rich milk. The feeding grounds are busier than anywhere you've been. Fin whales are everywhere, their spouts creating a forest of water columns stretching to the horizon. Some are solitary feeders like your mother, working alone to process the abundant krill. Others have formed loose groups, cooperating in ways that maximize everyone's feeding efficiency. You watch as a group of 5 adults swims in a coordinated pattern, herding krill into tighter concentrations before taking turns lunging through the densest parts of the swarm. But it's not just whales here. The abundance of krill has attracted every predator in the ocean. Seals rocket through the water, their sleek bodies twisting and turning as they chase individual krill through the swarm. Dolphins work in pods, using echolocation to track the densest concentrations of prey. Seabirds dive from above, their bodies piercing the surface like living missiles. The water is alive with movement, a feeding frenzy that spans the entire food chain. Your mother has been feeding constantly for 2 weeks when something goes wrong. You notice it first as a change in her swimming pattern. Instead of the smooth, purposeful movements you've grown used to, she begins to move erratically. Her dives become shallower, her feeding lunges less precise. When she surfaces to breathe, her spout seems weaker, less forceful than before. Then you see the reason. Carved into her left flank is a deep gash, the edges ragged and infected. You don't know how she got it. Maybe a collision with a ship, maybe an attack by something you never saw. But the wound is serious, and it's getting worse. The surrounding tissue is swollen and discolored, and you can smell the sickly sweet scent of infection in the water around her. She tried to continue feeding, but the effort is clearly draining her. Each lunge forward sends a visible shudder of pain through her massive body. She starts missing the densest parts of the krill swarms, her timing thrown off by the constant ache in her side. Her milk production begins to drop, and for the first time since your birth, you go hungry. Other whales notice her condition. They don't approach directly, but you see them watching from a distance, their calls carrying what sounds almost like concern. One older female, her body marked with the scars of decades in the ocean, begins swimming parallel to your course. She doesn't interfere, doesn't try to help directly, but her presence is oddly comforting. It's as if she's keeping vigil, waiting to see if your mother will recover or succumb to her injuries. Days pass, and your mother's condition deteriorates. The wound on her side has opened wider, creating a constant stream of blood that attracts scavengers. Sharks begin following your trail, their dark shapes visible in the water below. They don't attack. You and your mother are still too large, too dangerous, but they're patient. They know what blood in the water means, and they're willing to wait. Your mother makes one last desperate attempt to feed. She positions herself in front of a massive krill swarm, one of the densest you've seen. Her mouth opens wide, her throat grooves expand, and she lunges forward with everything she has left, but the effort is too much. As she closes her jaws, her entire body convulses. Blood streams from her wound, turning the water around her red. She surfaces slowly, her breathing labored and irregular. When her blowhole opens, pink foam mixes with the spray, a sign that something inside her is bleeding too, she calls out. A deep, mournful sound that carries for miles through the water. Other whales respond, their voices creating a chorus of whale song that seems to acknowledge what's happening. The older female who has been following you finally approaches. She swims alongside your mother, their massive bodies nearly touching. They don't communicate in any way you can understand, but there's clearly some kind of exchange happening. Your mother's calls become softer, less urgent. The older female responds with low, rumbling sounds that seem almost like comfort. Then your mother does something that changes everything. She gently pushes you toward the older female, using her massive head to guide you away from her wounded side. Shh. You resist at first, pressing back against her, trying to return to the familiar comfort of her presence. But she's persistent, and gradually you find yourself swimming beside this stranger, this scarred survivor who smells different, sounds different, feels different against your skin. The older female doesn't immediately accept you. She circles you warily, testing your scent, listening to your calls. You're not her calf, and she has no biological obligation to care for you. But something in your mother's desperate calls seems to convince her. Slowly, cautiously, she allows you to approach her side. When you search for milk, she doesn't push you away. Her milk tastes different from your mother's, less rich, less sweet, but it's sustenance. You're not her first calf, and you won't be her last. She's done this before, taken in orphans, raised them as her own. It's not common behavior among fin whales, but it happens often enough that she knows what to do. Your biological mother watches this transfer from a distance, her massive form growing smaller as the current carries her away. Her calls grow fainter, more sporadic, until finally they stop altogether. You call back, your high-pitched voice carrying across the water, but there's no response. The older female nudges you gently, encouraging you to swim forward, to stop looking back. You never see your birth mother again. Whether she recovered from her wounds or succumbed to them, you'll never know. But her sacrifice, pushing you toward safety, even as she faced her own mortality, has given you a chance to survive. The older female, who you begin to think of as your new mother, will teach you everything you need to know about life in the deep ocean. She's a more experienced hunter than your birth mother ever was. She shows you how to read the water, how to identify the subtle signs that indicate where krill will be most abundant. She teaches you to recognize the calls of other whales, to understand the complex social signals that govern interactions between members of your species. Most importantly, she shows you how to survive on your own. Your weaning begins earlier than it would have with your birth mother. The older female's milk production is already declining. She's past her prime reproductive years, and she knows you need to learn to feed yourself while she can still support you. She starts by showing you how to use your developing baleen, the flexible plates that will eventually allow you to filter krill from seawater. At first, your attempts are clumsy and inefficient. You open your mouth at the wrong angle, miss the densest parts of the krill swarms, fail to coordinate the complex muscle movements needed for successful filter feeding. But your adoptive mother is patient, demonstrating the technique over and over until you begin to understand. She swims beside you during your practice runs, correcting your form with gentle nudges and encouraging calls. Your first successful feeding attempt comes during your 7th month of life. You spot a small concentration of krill and position yourself carefully, remembering everything your new mother has taught you. You accelerate smoothly, your mouth opening wide, throat grooves expanding to accommodate the incoming water. For a moment, everything feels perfect. Then you close your jaws and use your tongue to force the water out through your still developing baleen plates. When you're done, your mouth contains actual food, not much. Maybe a few hundred krill compared to the thousands your mother can capture in a single lunge, but it's yours. You've caught it yourself, processed it yourself, and now you're swallowing it yourself. The taste is unlike anything you've experienced before. Fresh, salty, rich with oils and proteins that your growing body craves. Your adoptive mother calls out in what sounds like approval, and you respond with your own triumphant vocalization. Other whales in the area seem to take notice, their calls creating a brief chorus that feels almost like celebration. You've crossed an important threshold. You're no longer just a dependent calf. You're becoming a hunter. The transition from dependence to independence isn't immediate, though. Your adoptive mother still provides milk when your own hunting efforts fall short, but each week brings new challenges designed to push your abilities further. She leads you to increasingly difficult feeding situations, krill swarms that are deeper, more dispersed, or mixed with other plankton that makes filtering more complex. During one of these training sessions, you encounter something that tests every skill you've learned so far. The krill swarm is massive, stretching for miles beneath the surface, but it's not behaving normally. Instead of forming the predictable dense clouds you've grown used to, the tiny crustaceans are scattered in thin layers, constantly shifting and reforming in response to some unseen threat. Then you see what's causing the chaos. A pod of humpback whales is working the same feeding ground, using a technique you've never witnessed before. They're swimming in a coordinated spiral beneath the krill, releasing streams of bubbles as they rise. The bubbles form a net-like barrier that traps the krill in an ever-tightening circle. When the bubble net is complete, the humpbacks lunge upward through the center, their massive mouths engulfing thousands of concentrated prey in a single coordinated strike. Your adoptive mother watches this display with what seems like professional interest. She's not territorial about the feeding grounds. There's enough food here for everyone, but she's clearly studying their technique. Humpbacks and fin whales have different hunting strategies, but there's always something to learn from observing other species at work. She decides to use the humpback's activity to your advantage. While they're busy with their bubble netting on one side of the swarm, she positions you on the opposite edge, where their disturbance has pushed confused krill into tighter concentrations. It's an opportunistic move that maximizes your chances of success while the prey is disorganized and panicked. You line up your approach carefully, remembering everything she's taught you about reading water currents and prey behavior. The krill are moving erratically, but you can see patterns in their movement, places where they're bunching up, directions they're likely to flee. You pick your target and accelerate, your body cutting through the water with increasing confidence. This time, everything clicks. Your mouth opens at exactly the right moment. Your throat expands to its maximum capacity, and you engulf not just a few hundred krill, but several thousand. The filtering process that follows feels natural, automatic. Water streams out through your baleen, while the tiny crustaceans remain trapped inside your mouth. When you finally swallow, your stomach contains more food than you've ever caught on your own. Your adoptive mother's approval call is deeper this time, more resonant. She's not just acknowledging a successful hunt, she's recognizing your growing competence. Other whales in the area respond to her call, their voices creating a complex acoustic environment that you're beginning to understand carries social information. Who's successful at hunting, who's struggling, who's available for mating, who's traveling in which direction. The feeding season reaches its peak during your 8th month of life. The krill blooms are at their densest, and every whale in the area is taking advantage of the abundance. You're feeding independently now more often than not, though your adoptive mother still keeps close watch on your progress. Your body has grown tremendously. You're now over 40 feet long and weigh more than most adult land mammals. But with your increasing size comes new challenges. You're no longer small enough to slip through tight spaces or change direction quickly. Your movements must be more deliberate, more calculated. When a group of orcas appears on the horizon, your response is different than it would have been months ago. Instead of relying entirely on your mother's protection, you're large enough to contribute to your own defense. The orcas approach in their typical formation, spread out, communicating with clicks and calls, testing the waters for vulnerability. But you're not the helpless calf you once were. When they move closer, you position yourself alongside your adoptive mother, presenting a united front that gives the predators pause. Two large whales working together are a formidable obstacle, and the orcas seem to recognize that the risk-reward ratio isn't in their favor. They probe the situation for nearly an hour, never getting close enough to pose a real threat, but never completely abandoning their interest either. It's a tense standoff that teaches you about the complex predator-prey relationships that govern life in the open ocean. The orcas aren't mindless killing machines. They're intelligent hunters who carefully evaluate every situation before committing to an attack. Eventually, they move on to easier targets, and you're left with a new understanding of your place in the ocean's hierarchy. You're no longer prey in the traditional sense, but you're not invulnerable either. Your size is your primary defense, but it must be combined with intelligence, awareness, and the support of other whales to ensure your survival. As autumn approaches, the character of the feeding grounds begins to change. The massive krill blooms that sustained the summer feeding frenzy start to disperse. Water temperatures drop, and the tiny crustaceans begin their own migration to deeper waters where they'll spend the winter months. Your adoptive mother's feeding behavior becomes more selective, more focused on the richest remaining concentrations. She's also beginning to prepare you for the next phase of your development, your first migration back to warmer waters. The journey south will be different from the trip that brought you here as a nursing calf. This time, you'll be expected to contribute to your own survival, to make feeding decisions, to navigate by reading currents and following magnetic fields that you're only beginning to sense. The preparation begins with longer swims away from the feeding grounds. Your adoptive mother leads you on training journeys that last for days, teaching you to recognize the subtle environmental cues that will guide your navigation. The angle of sunlight penetrating the water, the temperature gradients that mark different ocean currents, the acoustic signatures of different underwater terrain features. You learn that the ocean floor far below you is not flat and featureless. It's a landscape as varied as any continent, with underwater mountains, vast plains, deep canyons, and volcanic ridges. Each of these features creates distinctive acoustic patterns that experienced whales use for navigation. Sound travels differently over a deep abyssal plain than it does when reflected off an underwater mountain range. Your adoptive mother demonstrates how to use these acoustic landmarks by having you close your eyes and rely entirely on sound to determine your location. At first, the exercise is overwhelming. The ocean is full of sounds, Whale calls, dolphin clicks, the rumble of distant storms, the grinding of tectonic plates, the whisper of currents flowing over underwater obstacles. Learning to sort through this acoustic chaos and extract useful navigational information is like learning a completely new language, but gradually, patterns emerge. You begin to recognize the distinctive echo signature of different types of underwater terrain. You learn to identify the calls of specific whale species and estimate their distance based on the clarity and volume of their vocalizations. Most importantly, you develop the ability to use your own calls as a form of echolocation, sending out low-frequency sounds and interpreting the returning echoes to build a mental map of your surroundings. This acoustic mapping becomes crucial when your adoptive mother leads you into deeper waters for advanced hunting practice. Here, far from the coastal shelves where krill concentrations are predictable, you must learn to locate prey in the three-dimensional vastness of the open ocean. The techniques that worked in the rich feeding grounds are less effective here, where food is scattered and harder to find. Your first attempt at deep water hunting is humbling. You spend hours searching for krill concentrations, following false leads and chasing acoustic shadows. When you finally locate a promising swarm, your approach is clumsy and loud, scattering the prey before you can get close enough to feed. You surface empty-mouthed and frustrated, while your adoptive mother demonstrates the subtle approach techniques that prevent prey from detecting your presence until it's too late. She shows you how to use the ocean's natural sound masking to your advantage. The rumble of distant storms, the calls of other marine life, even the sound of waves breaking on distant shores can provide acoustic cover for a hunting whale. By timing your approach to coincide with these natural sounds, you can get much closer to your prey before they detect the threat. The technique requires patience and precise timing, qualities that don't come naturally to a young whale eager to prove his hunting skills. You practice for days, learning to suppress your instinct to rush toward food in favor of the methodical, calculated approach that yields better results. Your adoptive mother is patient with your mistakes, but she's also increasingly demanding. She knows that your survival will depend on mastering these skills before she's no longer there to guide you. Your breakthrough comes during a night hunt in the deep ocean. Krill often rise toward the surface after dark, following the daily vertical migration that brings deep-sea plankton into shallower waters where they're easier to catch. You've been tracking a promising concentration for hours, using sound to monitor its movement while staying far enough away to avoid detection. When the moment is right, you execute the approach exactly as your adoptive mother taught you. You swim in from below, using the darkness and the natural sounds of the ocean to mask your presence. Your mouth opens silently, your throat grooves expand without creating turbulence, and you accelerate into the feeding lunge with perfect timing. The result is spectacular. Your mouth fills with krill in quantities that rival your adoptive mother's catches. The filtering process that follows is smooth and efficient, and when you surface to breathe, your stomach is fuller than it's ever been from your own hunting efforts. Your triumphant call echoes across the dark water, and your adoptive mother's response carries notes of pride and approval that make the long hours of practice worthwhile. But your education is far from complete. As the feeding season draws to a close and the time for migration approaches, your adoptive mother introduces you to the social complexities of whale society. The feeding grounds aren't just places to hunt, they're gathering points where whales from across the ocean come together to exchange information, establish relationships, and sometimes compete for resources. You begin to notice the subtle hierarchies that govern interactions between different whales. Age, size, and experience all play roles in determining who feeds where and when. Older, larger whales often claim the richest feeding areas, while younger animals like yourself are expected to work the margins. But it's not a rigid system. Clever positioning and superior hunting skills can sometimes overcome the disadvantages of youth and smaller size. Your adoptive mother introduces you to several other whales, each meeting carefully orchestrated to teach you something about social behavior. There's an ancient matriarch whose scarred hide tells the story of decades in the ocean, and whose deep calls command respect from every whale in the area. There's a group of young adults who formed a loose alliance, sharing information about food sources and coordinating their feeding efforts for mutual benefit. Most intriguingly, there are the solitary bulls, massive males who travel alone and interact with others only when necessary. These giants fascinate and intimidate you in equal measure. They're larger than any whale you've encountered, their calls deeper and more resonant than anything you can produce. When one of them passes near your feeding area, other whales give him a wide berth, acknowledging his presence with respectful calls but avoiding direct interaction. Your adoptive mother explains through a combination of calls and behavioral demonstrations that these bulls represent your future. As you mature, you'll gradually separate from female-dominated groups and begin the solitary lifestyle that characterizes adult male fin whales. It's a prospect that both excites and terrifies you, the freedom to roam the entire ocean at will, balanced against the loss of the social connections that have sustained you since birth. The transition begins sooner than you expect. As the feeding season winds down and preparations for migration begin, your adoptive mother starts spending more time away from you. At first, these separations last only a few hours, but gradually they extend to days. She's teaching you to be comfortable on your own, to make decisions without her guidance, to trust your own instincts when faced with uncertainty. During one of these solo periods, you encounter something that tests every survival skill you've learned. A massive storm system moves across the feeding grounds, bringing with it waves the size of buildings and winds that turn the ocean surface into a chaos of foam and spray. Your first instinct is to dive deep, to escape the violence at the surface by retreating to the calmer waters below. But diving isn't a complete solution. The storm's effects penetrate deep into the water column, creating powerful currents and pressure waves that threaten to disorient you. You must use all of your navigational skills to maintain your position, to avoid being swept away by currents or slammed into underwater obstacles by the storm's turbulence. The experience lasts for 2 days, during which you see no sign of your adoptive mother or any other whales. You're completely alone in a hostile environment, forced to rely entirely on your own resources for survival. You manage to feed sporadically, catching scattered krill that have been dispersed by the storm's violence. You navigate by sound when possible, by instinct when acoustic landmarks are obscured by the chaos above. When the storm finally passes and the ocean surface returns to its normal state, you find yourself miles from where you started. The feeding grounds that have been your home for months are nowhere to be seen, and the familiar calls of other whales are absent from the acoustic environment. For the first time in your life, you're truly lost. The panic that follows is unlike anything you've experienced. Every instinct screams at you to call out, to broadcast your location and hope that your adoptive mother will hear and respond. But another part of your developing intelligence recognizes that revealing your position might attract predators as easily as it might bring help. You force yourself to remain silent, to think through your situation rationally. Using the navigation techniques your adoptive mother taught you, you begin to map your surroundings acoustically. The echo patterns you receive suggest that you're in deep water, far from any coastal features that might serve as landmarks. But the acoustic signature isn't completely unfamiliar. There are similarities to areas you've visited during your training journeys. You pick a direction based on your best estimate of where the feeding grounds might be and begin swimming. It's a calculated risk. If you're wrong, you could be swimming away from safety rather than toward it. But remaining stationary isn't an option. Your energy reserves are limited, and you need to find food and familiar territory before exhaustion sets in. The swim lasts for 3 days, during which you encounter no other whales and find only scattered, low-quality food sources. Your calls go unanswered, and the acoustic environment remains frustratingly unfamiliar. Just when you begin to wonder if you'll ever see another whale again, you hear something that makes your heart race with relief. It's your adoptive mother's call, distant but unmistakable. You respond immediately, putting every ounce of energy into your reply. Her response comes back stronger, closer, and within hours you see her massive form approaching through the blue water. The reunion is emotional. Her calls carry notes of relief and what might even be pride, while your responses are pure joy and gratitude. But she doesn't immediately comfort you or take charge of the situation. Instead, she circles you at a distance, evaluating your condition and your behavior. Only when she's satisfied that you've handled the crisis competently does she approach closely enough for physical contact. It's a test you didn't know you were taking, and apparently you've passed. The storm separation becomes a turning point in your relationship with your adoptive mother. From that moment forward, she treats you less like a dependent calf and more like a capable young adult. Your training intensifies, covering more advanced hunting techniques, complex social situations, and the preparation necessary for your first trip. One day, you notice that your migration journey, the migration itself begins almost in per adoptive mother's feeding behavior, has changed, instead more selectively, building up fat reserves for the journey ahead. Othered of focusing exclusively on the richest krill concentrations, she's eating distance calls that coordinate the movements of whales across thousands of miles of whales. In the area are doing the same, and the acoustic environment fills with the longed. She's not just communicating with you anymore, she's part ocean. Your adoptive mother's calls take on new complexity during this period of a vast network of whales sharing information about ocean conditions, food availability, and optimal migration routes. You listen carefully to these exchanges, learning to recognize distance whale communication. The actual departure happens without ceremony. One morning, the different types of information being transmitted and the social protocols that govern long, your adoptive mother simply starts swimming south, and you follow. There's no dramatic farewell to the feeding grounds, no final feeding frenzy to prepare for the journey. You're simply migrating, part of an ancient pattern that has guided your species for millions of years. The early stages of the migration are unlike anything you've experienced. Instead of the relatively confined area of the feeding grounds, you're swimming across vast expanses of open ocean where the horizon stretches endlessly in every direction. The water beneath you drops to depths that seem infinite, and the surface above provides the only reference point in a three-dimensional void. Your adoptive mother sets a steady pace that you struggle to maintain at first. Your shorter body length means you must work harder to cover the same distance, and the constant swimming quickly exhausts muscles that are used to the more leisurely movements of feeding behavior. But she's patient with your limitations, adjusting the pace when necessary and providing encouragement through her calls. The migration route follows invisible highways marked by magnetic fields, temperature gradients, and acoustic landmarks that your adoptive mother reads with the expertise of millions of years of evolution. You're learning to recognize these same markers, building the mental map that will eventually allow you to make this journey independently. Other whales join your migration path as the days pass. At first, they're distant shapes on the horizon, their spouts marking their presence, but keeping far enough away to maintain the solitary nature that defines your species. But as the journey progresses, loose aggregations form, not pods in the way dolphins travel, but parallel courses that allow for occasional communication while respecting individual space. You begin to understand that this migration isn't just about reaching warmer waters. It's a massive information-sharing network spanning thousands of miles. Whales pass news about ocean conditions, predator sightings, and optimal routes through their calls. Your adoptive mother participates in these exchanges, her deep vocalizations carrying data about feeding success in the areas you've left behind. The water temperature rises gradually as you travel south, but other changes are more dramatic. The deep blue of polar waters gives way to different shades, different textures. Plankton communities shift, bringing new scents and tastes to the water around you. Your adoptive mother's feeding becomes even more sporadic. The krill concentrations that sustained her in the north are rare here, replaced by scattered prey that requires more energy to catch than it provides. You notice her body changing as the journey continues. The thick layer of blubber she built up during the feeding season begins to shrink. Her massive frame, which seemed invincible in the rich northern waters, starts to look leaner. She's burning her fat reserves to fuel the migration, living off stored energy just as your birth mother did during your gestation. It's a calculated risk. She must reach the breeding grounds while still having enough reserves to survive the return journey. Your own body is changing too, but in different ways. The constant swimming is building muscle mass you've never had before. Your flukes are growing stronger, more efficient at propelling your massive body through the water. Your lung capacity is expanding, allowing for longer dives and more efficient oxygen usage. You're becoming a true ocean traveler, adapted for the endless journeys that will define your adult life. The migration takes you through different oceanic zones, each with its own character and challenges. You cross underwater mountain ranges, where the acoustic environment changes dramatically, the sound of your calls reflecting off hidden peaks and valleys far below. You traverse vast abyssal plains, where the water stretches empty in every direction, broken only by the occasional seamount rising from the depths, like an underwater island. In one of these deep water regions, you encounter something that stops you cold. The water ahead shimmers with an unnatural light, and as you approach, you realize you're seeing bioluminescence on a scale you've never imagined. Millions of jellyfish drift through the water column, their translucent bodies pulsing with blue-green light. The entire ocean around you glows like a living aurora, stretching in every direction as far as you can see. Your adoptive mother swims through this ethereal display without apparent concern, but you're mesmerized. The jellyfish part around your massive body, creating swirling patterns of light that follow in your wake. Some are tiny, no bigger than your eye, while others trail tentacles longer than your entire body. None of them seem interested in you as anything more than an obstacle to swim around, but their presence transforms the ocean into something magical. The bioluminescent display lasts for hours, and when you finally emerge from it, The normal darkness of the deep ocean seems somehow diminished. You've witnessed one of the ocean's great spectacles, a reminder that even after months of life in the sea, you've barely begun to understand its mysteries. As the migration continues, you start to notice subtle changes in your adoptive mother's behavior. Her calls are becoming more complex, carrying information you don't fully understand. She's also becoming more selective about which whale calls she responds to, ignoring some vocalizations while immediately answering others. You're witnessing the beginning of the breeding season's social dynamics, though you won't fully understand their significance for years to come. The water continues to warm, and with the temperature change comes a shift in marine life. Tropical species begin to appear, colorful fish that dart through the water in schools that flash like underwater rainbows, sea turtles that swim with ancient grace, dolphins that approach with playful curiosity before deciding you're too large to be interesting. The ocean's character is transforming from the stark productivity of polar waters to the diverse abundance of equatorial seas. Your first encounter with a humpback whale in these warmer waters provides a stark contrast to the feeding ground interactions you remember. This individual isn't focused on hunting. Instead, it's singing. The complex melody fills the water around you, a haunting composition that seems to tell stories you can't quite comprehend. Your adoptive mother listens to the song without responding, but you can sense her attention focused entirely on the sounds. The humpback's song continues for nearly an hour, each phrase building on the last in patterns that suggest intelligence and purpose. When it finally stops, the silence that follows feels profound. Your adoptive mother resumes swimming, but something in her posture has changed. She's more alert, more focused on the acoustic environment around you. You begin to hear other songs in the distance, not humpbacks this time, but the deep calls of other fin whales, their voices carrying across miles of water. Some of these calls are similar to your adoptive mother's vocalizations, but others are distinctly different. There's a quality to them that you've never heard before, a resonance that seems to bypass your conscious mind and speak directly to something deeper. Your adoptive mother responds to some of these calls, her vocalizations taking on new characteristics that make them sound almost like a different language. The exchanges that follow are complex, layered with meaning that you can sense but not understand. It's like listening to a conversation in a foreign language. You can tell communication is happening, but the content remains mysterious. The migration route begins to converge with other paths as you approach equatorial waters. Whales that have been traveling parallel courses for thousands of miles start to angle toward common destinations. The loose aggregations that formed during the early stages of migration tighten into more concentrated groups, though still maintaining the respectful distances that characterize fin whale social behavior. Your adoptive mother's interactions with other whales become more frequent and more intense. You watch her engage in what can only be described as acoustic duels with other females, their calls overlapping and interweaving in complex patterns. These exchanges aren't aggressive in the way you might expect from competing predators. Instead, they seem to be establishing some kind of social hierarchy or territorial arrangement. The males in the area are behaving differently too. The massive bulls that kept their distance in the feeding grounds are now actively seeking interactions with females. Their calls have changed from the simple communication signals you remember to complex songs that rival the humpback's melodies in their intricacy. When one of these giants passes nearby, the water itself seems to vibrate with the power of his vocalizations. Your own voice is changing as you grow. The high-pitched calls of calfhood are giving way to deeper tones, though you're still far from the resonant bass notes that characterize adult males. You practice your vocalizations constantly, experimenting with different frequencies and patterns. Sometimes, your adoptive mother responds to these experiments with what sounds like approval. Other times, she corrects you with gentle calls that guide your vocal development. The breeding grounds, when you finally reach them, are unlike anywhere you've been. The water is warm and crystal clear, with visibility extending for hundreds of feet in every direction. Coral reefs rise from the depths like underwater cities, their surfaces alive with colors that don't exist in the polar seas. Schools of tropical fish create moving curtains of silver and gold, while larger predators patrol the reef edges with casual efficiency. But it's the whale activity that truly sets this place apart. Fin whales are everywhere, their massive forms creating a constantly shifting pattern of movement and sound. The acoustic environment is overwhelming, dozens of whales calling simultaneously, their voices creating a symphony of communication that never stops. Your adoptive mother adds her voice to this chorus, her calls immediately answered by multiple respondents. You watch, fascinated as complex social interactions play out around you. Pairs of whales swim together in synchronized patterns that seem almost choreographed. Groups of females engage in elaborate vocal displays that attract the attention of circling males. Competitive encounters between bulls create acoustic storms that can be heard for miles, their deep calls overlapping in contests of vocal prowess. Your adoptive mother participates in some of these interactions while keeping you close by. She's not actively breeding. Her focus remains on your development, but she's clearly evaluating the social landscape, establishing relationships that may be important in future seasons. You're learning through observation, absorbing the complex social protocols that govern whale society. The abundance of life in the breeding grounds provides feeding opportunities that have been scarce during the migration. Small schools of fish and squid offer easy targets for a young whale still perfecting his hunting skills. Your adoptive mother encourages these feeding attempts, though she's careful to ensure you don't become so focused on hunting that you lose track of the larger social dynamics happening around you. During one of your solo hunting expeditions, you encounter something that changes your perspective on your place in the ocean's hierarchy. A group of young male fin whales, all roughly your age but from different mothers, has formed a loose association. They're not exactly a pod in the traditional sense, but they're clearly seeking each other's company for mutual benefit. One of them approaches you with what seems like friendly curiosity. His calls are similar to yours in pitch and complexity, marking him as another adolescent still finding his voice. The interaction that follows is your first real social contact with a peer, and it's both exciting and nerve-wracking. You exchange calls, test each other's responses, and eventually end up swimming together in the casual parallel pattern that characterizes fin whale social behavior. The group accepts you without ceremony, and for the first time since leaving your birth mother, you experience something like friendship. These young males are facing the same challenges you are, learning to hunt independently, developing their adult voices, navigating the complex social environment of the breeding grounds. Together, you form a support network that makes the intimidating world of adult whale society seem more manageable. Your adoptive mother watches these interactions with apparent approval. She's been gradually increasing the time she spends away from you, and your new social connections provide the support structure that will ease your eventual complete independence. She still responds to your calls when you need guidance, but she's no longer your constant companion. The breeding season reaches its peak during your 10th month of life. The acoustic environment becomes even more intense as whales from across the Pacific converge on the breeding grounds. Competition between males escalates into spectacular displays of size and vocal power. You watch in awe as bulls longer than your entire body engage in acoustic duels that shake the water around them. Some of these encounters turn physical, though actual violence is rare. More often, the competitions are resolved through displays of dominance that allow both participants to assess each other's capabilities without risking injury. The largest, most experienced males command respect through their presence alone, their deep calls silencing smaller competitors before conflicts can escalate. Your group of young males stays well clear of these adult competitions, but you watch and learn from a safe distance. The social hierarchies you're observing will become increasingly important as you mature. Understanding the complex relationships between different whales, the subtle signals that communicate status and intention, will be crucial to your survival and an eventual reproductive success. The breeding grounds also provide your first exposure to human activity on a large scale. Ships pass through the area regularly, their engines creating acoustic pollution that interferes with whale communication. Your adoptive mother teaches you to recognize the different types of vessels and their associated threat levels. Most are simply passing through and pose no direct danger, but others require more careful monitoring. You witness your first ship strike during this time, though fortunately not involving any whale you know personally. A young female, probably on her first migration, surfaces directly in the path of a fast-moving cargo vessel. The collision is brief but devastating, and by the time other whales reach her, there's nothing to be done. Her body sinks slowly into the blue depths, a reminder that the ocean's dangers extend beyond natural predators. The incident affects the entire whale community. Calls of distress and mourning echo across the breeding grounds for days, and you notice that whales begin surfacing more cautiously, checking for ship traffic before fully exposing themselves at the surface. Your adoptive mother uses the tragedy as a teaching moment, showing you how to listen for engine sounds and estimate vessel speed and direction. As your first breeding season draws to a close, you begin to sense preparations for another migration. The intense social activity that characterized the peak breeding period starts to wind down. Pairs that formed during the season begin to separate, and the competitive displays between males become less frequent. The water itself seems to be changing, subtle shifts in temperature and current that signal the approach of a new season. Your adoptive mother's behavior shifts accordingly. She becomes more focused on feeding, taking advantage of the prey species that flourish in the warm waters around the breeding grounds. She's building up energy reserves for the return journey to polar waters, a migration that will be even more challenging than the trip south. Pregnant females will be making this journey while supporting developing calves, requiring enormous energy expenditure. Your group of young males faces a decision that will shape your future relationships. Some are preparing to accompany their adoptive or birth mothers on the return migration, continuing their dependence for another season. Others are choosing independence, forming loose bachelor groups that will follow their own migration routes. The choice isn't permanent. Young whales often alternate between independence and family association for several years, but it represents an important step toward adulthood. You find yourself torn between these options. Your adoptive mother has made it clear that you're welcome to continue traveling with her, but she's also indicated that she would support your decision to strike out on your own. The group of young males you've befriended is planning to attempt the return migration independently, relying on collective knowledge and mutual support to navigate the challenges ahead. The decision, when it comes, feels natural rather than forced. During a feeding session near a coral reef, your adoptive mother and your peer group end up in the same area pursuing the same school of fish. As the hunt concludes, the social dynamics make your choice clear. Your adoptive mother positions herself slightly apart from the group, while your companions form a tight formation that includes you naturally. You exchange final calls with your adoptive mother, vocalizations that carry gratitude, affection, and farewell. Her response is equally complex, mixing approval with what might be interpreted as maternal pride. She's watched you develop from a desperate orphan into a capable young whale, and now she's releasing you to continue that development independently. The separation isn't dramatic or emotional in human terms. She simply begins swimming in a different direction, her massive form gradually disappearing into the blue distance. You're all together. You're no longer her responsibility, and calls to her become more sporadic and eventually stop. She's no longer yours to depend on. You're free to make your own choices, follow your own instincts, and face whatever challenges the ocean presents. Your new companions accept this transition without comment. They've all made similar choices, breaking ties with parental figures to form their own social unit. The group dynamic is different from your relationship with your adoptive mother, more egalitarian, based on mutual benefit, rather than the protective care of an experienced adult. You're all learning together now, sharing discoveries and supporting each other through mistakes. The return migration begins with less ceremony than your southern journey. There's no single moment of departure, just a gradual shift in swimming direction as the group begins moving toward cooler waters. The route you follow is different from the one you took with your adoptive mother, chosen by collective decision rather than following an experienced guide's knowledge. This independence comes with new challenges. Navigation becomes a group responsibility, with different members contributing observations about currents, acoustic landmarks, and celestial cues. When the group makes a wrong turn and ends up in increasingly shallow water, it takes several days of collective problem solving to correct the error and return to the proper migration route. Feeding becomes more competitive within the group. Without an experienced adult to demonstrate optimal hunting techniques or claim the best feeding spots, you must establish your own hierarchy based on size, skill, and assertiveness. These competitions are generally friendly, but they introduce elements of rivalry that didn't exist in your relationship with your adoptive mother. The most significant challenge comes when the group encounters a situation that would have been easily handled by an experienced adult. A severe storm system blocks your intended route, creating dangerous sea conditions that extend for hundreds of miles. Your adoptive mother would have known alternative paths or safe waiting areas, but your group has no such accumulated wisdom to draw upon. The decision-making process that follows tests the group's cohesion and your individual leadership abilities. Some members want to push through the storm, relying on size and strength to overcome the adverse conditions. Others advocate for a long detour that would add weeks to the migration, but avoid the worst weather. A few suggest waiting for the storm to pass, though this could exhaust food reserves and delay arrival at the feeding grounds. You find yourself taking a more active role in these discussions than you expected. Your experiences with your adoptive mother, including the separation during the storm that tested your independent survival skills, give you perspectives that your companions lack. You advocate for a measured approach that combines elements of each strategy, a partial detour that avoids the storm's center while maintaining progress toward your destination. The route you ultimately choose proves challenging but successful. The group stays together through several days of rough weather, supporting each other when individual members struggle with the conditions. By the time you emerge into calmer waters, you've established yourself as something of a leader within the group, a role that brings both satisfaction and responsibility. The feeding grounds, when you finally reach them, seem different through the lens of independence. The rich krill concentrations that sustained you during your first season are still there, but now you must compete for access to the best feeding areas. Your group's small size becomes an advantage in some situations. You can exploit smaller krill patches that wouldn't interest larger aggregations of whales, but a disadvantage when competing with established adults for prime territory. You develop feeding strategies that play to your group's strengths. Coordinated hunting allows you to process larger krill swarms more efficiently than any individual could alone. By working together, you can also maintain better surveillance for predators and other threats while feeding. The cooperation that develops during these hunts strengthens the bonds between group members and establishes patterns that will persist for years to come. Your second feeding season proves more successful than your first independent attempts at hunting. Your body continues growing rapidly, though you're still far from your adult size. Your voice deepens noticeably, allowing you to participate more effectively in long-distance communication with other whales. Most importantly, you develop the confidence that comes from successfully meeting the ocean's challenges without parental protection. As autumn approaches and preparations for the next migration begin, your group faces decisions about its future composition. Some members have thrived in the bachelor group environment and want to continue traveling together. Others have encountered potential mates during the feeding season and are considering breaking away to pursue breeding opportunities. A few are showing interest in rejoining family groups, attracted by the security and accumulated knowledge that experienced adults provide. Your own choice reflects the growing confidence and independence you've developed over the past year. You decide to remain with the core group of companions who have proven themselves reliable partners. Together, you'll face whatever challenges the next migration brings, continuing to learn and grow as a functioning social unit. The second southward migration proceeds more smoothly than your first independent journey. The group's collective navigation skills have improved, and you've developed efficient decision-making processes that prevent the delays and conflicts that marked your earlier travels. You're becoming experienced ocean travelers, capable of handling most situations without external guidance. But the ocean still holds surprises that test your abilities in unexpected ways. During a routine feeding stop in mid-ocean waters, your group encounters something none of you have seen before: a massive garbage patch, floating debris that stretches for miles across the surface. Plastic bags, discarded fishing gear, and countless smaller pieces of human-made materials create a treacherous obstacle course that threatens entanglement and ingestion injuries. Navigation through this contaminated area requires careful coordination and constant vigilance. Several group members accidentally ingest plastic debris, mistaking it for food. While none of these incidents prove fatal, they serve as stark reminders that human influence on the ocean extends far beyond ship traffic and noise pollution. The ocean that sustains your species is changing in ways that your evolutionary history hasn't prepared you to handle. Your group's response to this challenge demonstrates the collaborative problem-solving abilities you've developed. By sharing observations about dangerous debris types and safe passage routes, you minimize the risks while maintaining progress toward your destination. The experience adds another layer to your understanding of ocean survival, one that previous generations of whales never had to consider. The breeding grounds welcome your return with the familiar chaos of whale social activity. But this time, your perspective is different. You're no longer an observer learning about adult whale society. You're beginning to participate in it. Your calls draw responses from other whales. Your presence is acknowledged by established community members, and your opinions carry weight in group decisions. Most significantly, you notice that some of the females in the area are responding to your vocalizations with interest rather than the polite indifference you remember from previous seasons. You're still years away from full sexual maturity, but you're entering the phase of development where social bonds formed during breeding seasons begin to influence future reproductive opportunities. Your group's dynamics shift to accommodate these developing interests. Competition for female attention introduces new tensions that must be balanced against the cooperation that has sustained your partnership. Some members begin spending more time away from the group, pursuing individual interests that may eventually lead to permanent separation. You find yourself increasingly drawn to the complex social interactions that define breeding season activity. The acoustic displays, the competitive encounters, the intricate courtship behaviors, all of it begins to make sense in ways it never did when you were focused solely on survival and growth. You're becoming an active participant in the continuation of your species, even though full reproductive maturity is still several years away. The seasonal cycle continues, but each rotation brings new challenges and opportunities. Your body grows larger and more powerful with each feeding season. Your voice deepens further, eventually reaching the resonant bass tones that characterize adult male fin whales. Your hunting skills become more refined, allowing you to exploit food sources that were beyond your reach as a younger whale. Most importantly, your understanding of the ocean's rhythms becomes increasingly sophisticated. You learn to read weather patterns weeks in advance, to predict the movements of prey species based on subtle environmental cues, to navigate by magnetic fields and stellar positions that were invisible to your younger self. The ocean that once seemed vast and mysterious becomes a familiar environment where you can thrive independently. Your bachelor group begins to fragment as members reach different stages of maturity. Some drift away to pursue solitary lifestyles, following the ancient pattern of adult male fin whales. Others form new alliances with different companions, seeking partnerships that better match their evolving needs and personalities. You watch these departures with mixed emotions, sadness at losing trusted companions, but also excitement about the possibilities that independence might bring. By your 4th year, you've grown into a formidable presence. Your body now stretches nearly 60 feet from nose to tail, and your weight has increased to match your impressive length. Your calls carry for hundreds of miles through the ocean, deep bass notes that command attention from other whales. When you vocalize, smaller whales pause their activities to listen. You're no longer the desperate orphan who needed protection. You're becoming a force to be reckoned with. The transformation isn't just physical. Your hunting abilities have reached a level of sophistication that would have seemed impossible during your early struggles with baleen feeding. You can read krill movements like a language, predicting their responses to environmental changes and positioning yourself for maximum efficiency. Your feeding lunges capture tons of prey in single strikes, and you've learned to exploit food sources that inexperienced whales miss entirely. But with size and capability comes responsibility. Younger whales begin approaching you during feeding seasons, seeking the guidance and protection you once received from your adoptive mother. At first, you're uncertain how to respond to these requests. You're not their parent, and you have no biological obligation to help them. Yet something in their desperate calls reminds you of your own early struggles, and you find yourself reluctantly accepting a mentorship role. Your first protege is a 2-year-old male whose mother disappeared during a storm. He's survived the immediate crisis, but lacks the skills needed for long-term independence. Teaching him proper hunting techniques forces you to analyze your own methods more carefully than ever before. You must break down instinctive behaviors into teachable components, explaining through calls and demonstrations what comes naturally to you. The process is more rewarding than you expected. Watching the young whale's skills develop under your guidance gives you a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. When he successfully completes his first solo hunt, his triumphant calls echo your own memories of early achievement. You're contributing to the continuation of whale culture, passing down knowledge that ensures your species' survival. More young whales seek your assistance as word of your teaching abilities spreads through the whale community. Your informal school becomes a recognized institution within the feeding ground's social structure. Experienced females trust you with their offspring, knowing that your guidance will improve their chances of survival. You develop a reputation as a patient, effective mentor who takes genuine interest in his students' development. This teaching role brings unexpected benefits. The network of relationships you build through mentorship creates connections throughout the whale community. Former students maintain contact even after achieving independence, sharing information about ocean conditions and food sources. You become part of an informal intelligence network that spans thousands of miles of ocean. Your acoustic signature becomes well known throughout your range. Other whales recognize your calls from great distances, and your vocalizations carry social weight that reflects your growing status. When you announce your presence in a new area, other whales adjust their behavior accordingly. Some approach seeking interaction, while others respectfully maintain distance, acknowledging your territorial claims. The solitary lifestyle that characterizes adult male fin whales begins to appeal to you more strongly. Your bachelor group has dissolved completely, its members scattered across the Pacific, pursuing their own destinies. While you value the mentorship relationships you've developed, the constant social interaction becomes exhausting. You start craving the peaceful isolation that comes with independent travel. Your first truly solo migration marks a significant milestone in your development. Without companions to consider or students to guide, you can set your own pace and choose your own route. The freedom is intoxicating. You explore areas of ocean you've never seen before, following curiosity rather than necessity. You discover isolated seamounts where unique communities of deep-sea creatures thrive in perpetual darkness. The acoustic environment changes dramatically when you travel alone. Without the constant chatter of companions, you become more attuned to subtle sounds that reveal the ocean's hidden activities. You can hear whale calls from much greater distances, track the movements of ship traffic across entire ocean basins, and detect weather systems days before they arrive. Solitude sharpens your senses in ways that social travel never could. Your hunting efficiency reaches new heights during solo forays. Without competition from companions, you can exploit the richest krill concentrations without sharing. Your feeding becomes more selective, focusing on the highest quality prey rather than simply consuming whatever's available. This improved nutrition supports continued growth and maintains the energy reserves needed for long-distance travel. But solitude also brings new challenges. Navigation becomes entirely your responsibility, with no backup if you make errors in judgment. When you encounter severe weather or dangerous predators, you must rely entirely on your own resources for survival. The support network that sustained you through earlier challenges is no longer immediately available. Your first major test of independent survival comes during a crossing of the North Pacific's most remote waters. A massive storm system, larger than anything you've previously encountered, blocks your intended route for over a week. The waves reach heights that threaten to disorient even an experienced whale, and the constant turbulence makes feeding impossible. You're forced to dive deeper than ever before, seeking calmer water beneath the storm's influence. The pressure at these depths is crushing, and the darkness is absolute. You navigate by sound alone, using echolocation to avoid underwater obstacles while conserving energy for the long wait until surface conditions improve. For days, you exist in a world without light, sustained only by stored fat reserves and the determination to outlast the storm. When you finally surface after the weather passes, you find yourself hundreds of miles off course in unfamiliar waters. The acoustic landmarks you rely on for navigation are absent, and the star patterns visible during surface breathing don't match any you recognize. For the first time since your early separation from your adoptive mother, you're genuinely lost in the vast Pacific. The navigation challenge that follows tests every skill you've developed over years of ocean travel. You must reconstruct your position using subtle environmental cues, water temperature gradients, current patterns, the acoustic signatures of distant geological features. It takes weeks of careful observation and systematic exploration to determine your location and plot a course toward familiar territory. The experience teaches you valuable lessons about self-reliance and the importance of maintaining multiple navigation systems. You develop backup methods for determining your position, including ways to read magnetic field variations and interpret the behavior of migrating seabirds. These skills prove invaluable during subsequent solo journeys across the Pacific's vast expanses. Your reputation as a solitary traveler grows throughout the whale community. Other whales report sighting you in remote locations where few venture, earning you a mystique that enhances your social status. Younger males speak of you with respect, tinged by envy, while experienced females regard you as a potential mate worthy of consideration when breeding season arrives. The breeding grounds take on new significance as you approach full sexual maturity. Your massive size and proven independence make you an attractive partner, and you find yourself the focus of female attention that was absent during your younger years. The complex courtship behaviors you observed as an adolescent suddenly become personally relevant as you navigate the social dynamics of potential mating relationships. Your first serious courtship attempt proves more challenging than expected. The female you pursue is an experienced matriarch with high standards and little patience for inexperienced suitors. She tests your worthiness through acoustic challenges that require precise vocal control and sophisticated communication skills. Your responses must demonstrate not just physical capability, but intelligence, social awareness, and the genetic fitness that would benefit any offspring. The competition for her attention includes several other males, each bringing different strengths to the courtship contest. Some are larger than you, others more experienced in breeding behavior. A few have established territories in prime feeding areas that would provide excellent resources for raising calves. You must find ways to distinguish yourself from these competitors while respecting the social protocols that govern whale mating behavior. Your strategy emphasizes the unique combination of skills you've developed through your unconventional upbringing and extensive solo travels. You demonstrate navigation abilities that few whales possess, sharing acoustic maps of remote feeding areas that could provide exclusive access to rich food sources. Your teaching experience translates into sophisticated communication skills that impress even experienced females. The courtship process extends over several weeks, during which you must balance attention to your chosen female with the need to maintain your physical condition and social relationships. Other whales watch these proceedings with interest, as successful matings often influence future breeding season dynamics. Your performance will affect not just your immediate reproductive success, but your long-term status within the whale community. When the female finally accepts your courtship, the mating itself proves anticlimactic compared to the extended competition that preceded it. The physical act is brief, but its implications extend far beyond the immediate interaction. You've successfully entered the ranks of breeding males, proven your genetic worth, and established relationships that will influence your future reproductive opportunities. The female's pregnancy unfolds over the following months, as both of you resume your separate migration patterns. You won't play a direct role in raising any resulting calf. That responsibility belongs entirely to the mother, but you've contributed to the continuation of your species. Somewhere in the vast Pacific, a new generation carries genes you provided, ensuring that your unique combination of traits will persist in the whale population. Your solo lifestyle becomes more appealing as you age. The constant social interaction of breeding seasons provides stimulation and reproductive opportunities, but the peaceful isolation of independent travel allows for deeper exploration of the ocean's mysteries. You develop preferences for specific migration routes that offer unique experiences or particularly abundant food sources. One of your favorite destinations becomes a deep-water trench system where unusual prey species concentrate during certain seasons. The hunting here requires specialized techniques that few whales master, but the rewards justify the effort. Bioluminescent squid rise from the depths in massive aggregations. Their glowing bodies creating underwater light shows that rival any surface aurora. Your expertise in these challenging hunting grounds attracts the attention of other whales seeking to exploit the same resources. Some approach as students, hoping to learn your techniques. Others come as competitors, challenging your territorial claims. You must constantly balance the benefits of sharing knowledge against the need to protect your access to limited resources. The deep-water hunting also exposes you to creatures and phenomena that exist nowhere else in the ocean. Giant squids emerge from abyssal depths, their tentacles longer than your entire body. Underwater volcanic activity creates thermal vents that support exotic communities of tube worms and bacteria. Bioluminescent displays triggered by your movements paint the water with living light that seems almost supernatural. These experiences in the ocean's most remote regions provide perspectives that landlubbers could never imagine. You witness the planet's geological processes firsthand, feeling the vibrations of underwater earthquakes and watching new seafloor emerge from volcanic eruptions. The ocean reveals itself as a dynamic, living system where constant change creates endless opportunities for those capable of adapting. Your acoustic abilities reach their peak during your prime years. Your calls can travel across entire ocean basins, carrying complex information to whales thousands of miles away. You become part of a global communication network that shares data about weather patterns, food availability, and migration routes. Your voice joins the ancient chorus of whale songs that has echoed through Earth's oceans for millions of years. The responsibility that comes with this acoustic reach weighs heavily at times. Younger whales across the Pacific rely on information you provide, making decisions that affect their survival based on your reports of ocean conditions. When you announce the discovery of a new feeding area or one of dangerous weather approaching, dozens of whales adjust their behavior accordingly. Your influence extends beyond individual survival to species-wide patterns. The migration routes you pioneer become established pathways that other whales follow for years afterward. Your hunting techniques spread through the population as students share what they've learned from you. You're not just surviving in the ocean, you're actively shaping how your species adapts to changing environmental conditions. The ocean itself changes dramatically during your lifetime. Climate shifts alter the distribution of prey species, forcing adaptations in hunting strategies and migration timing. Human activity increases throughout your range, bringing new challenges that your evolutionary history never prepared your species to handle. Ship traffic, pollution, and acoustic interference create obstacles that require constant vigilance and behavioral adjustment. You witness the gradual transformation of familiar feeding grounds as warming waters drive krill populations toward the poles. Traditional migration routes become less reliable as environmental conditions shift. Some areas that supported abundant whale populations for millennia become barren, while new opportunities emerge in regions that were previously too cold or nutrient poor to sustain large-scale feeding. Your adaptability becomes crucial for survival as these changes accelerate. The navigation skills and environmental awareness you developed through decades of solo travel allow you to exploit new resources while avoiding degraded areas. You pioneer alternative migration routes that younger whales eagerly adopt, ensuring that your species can continue thriving despite rapidly changing conditions. The teaching role you established earlier in life becomes even more important as environmental pressures increase. Young whales need guidance not just in traditional hunting and navigation techniques, but in adapting to unprecedented challenges. Your experience with human-impacted waters and changing prey distributions provides crucial knowledge for the next generation's survival. Your acoustic communications evolve to include new types of information relevant to the changing ocean environment. You develop calls that warn of ship traffic patterns, identify pollution concentrations that should be avoided, and announce the discovery of new feeding areas in previously unexplored regions. The whale communication network adapts in real time to address emerging challenges. The breeding seasons of your later years bring different satisfactions than the competitive displays of your youth. Your massive size and proven genetic success make you an automatically attractive mate, reducing the need for elaborate courtship behaviors. Experienced females seek you out, recognizing the survival advantages your genes would provide to their offspring. Your offspring, scattered across the Pacific through multiple breeding seasons, carry forward the unique combination of traits that enabled your success. Some inherit your exceptional navigation abilities, others your acoustic talents or hunting skills. Each represents a small contribution to your species' ongoing adaptation to an ever-changing ocean environment. The mentorship relationships you maintain with younger whales provide ongoing purpose beyond mere survival and reproduction. You watch former students become successful hunters, navigators, and eventually teachers themselves. The knowledge you've accumulated over decades continues spreading through the whale community, multiplying your impact far beyond what any individual could achieve alone. Your solo journeys become increasingly ambitious as your confidence and experience grow. You explore regions of the Pacific that few whales ever visit, documenting new feeding areas and navigation routes that expand your species' known range. Some of these expeditions take you to the edges of the whale world, where the ocean meets ice shelves or descends into trenches so deep that sunlight has never penetrated their depths. The discoveries you make during these exploratory journeys contribute to the collective knowledge that guides whale migrations across the Pacific. Other whales incorporate your findings into their own travel plans, creating new pathways through previously unknown waters. Your pioneering spirit helps ensure that your species remains adaptable and resilient in the face of ongoing environmental change. The ocean's acoustic environment becomes increasingly cluttered with human-generated noise as shipping traffic expands and industrial activity intensifies. Your communication abilities, honed over decades of long-distance calling, prove essential for maintaining contact with other whales despite this interference. You develop techniques for transmitting information through the noise, ensuring that vital messages reach their intended recipients. Your role as an acoustic pioneer becomes as important as your contributions to navigation and hunting knowledge. Younger whales learn from your example how to adapt their communication strategies to cope with anthropogenic noise. The techniques you develop spread through the population, helping preserve the acoustic culture that binds whale communities together across vast distances. The deep satisfaction of a life fully lived begins to characterize your later years. You've survived challenges that claimed many of your contemporaries, contributed to your species' genetic diversity and cultural knowledge, and helped guide the next generation through unprecedented environmental changes. Your influence on the whale community extends far beyond your individual achievements. The ocean that once seemed vast and mysterious has become a familiar home where you move with confidence and purpose. Every current, every thermal layer, every acoustic landmark holds memories of journeys undertaken and challenges overcome. You've transformed from a vulnerable orphan dependent on others' protection into a master of your environment whose knowledge benefits whales throughout the Pacific. Your body, despite its massive size and apparent durability, begins showing subtle signs of the decades you've spent in the ocean's demanding environment. Scars from encounters with ships, predators, and underwater obstacles tell the story of a life lived fully in one of Earth's most challenging environments. Your movements remain powerful and efficient, but the endless swimming and diving that characterize whale existence exact their toll even on the most robust individuals. The acoustic signature that once carried across entire ocean basins begins to show slight changes in frequency and power. Other whales notice these shifts, recognizing them as natural signs of aging rather than weakness or illness. Your voice remains authoritative and respected, but it carries the gravitas of accumulated experience rather than the raw power of youth. Your migration patterns become more selective as you prioritize energy conservation while maintaining access to the most productive feeding areas. The epic solo journeys that once took you to the ocean's remotest regions give way to more efficient routes that maximize nutritional return while minimizing unnecessary exertion. Your vast experience allows you to identify the richest food sources without the extensive exploration that younger whales require. The mentorship role that has defined much of your adult life takes on new dimensions as your own mortality becomes more apparent. The knowledge you've accumulated over decades represents an irreplaceable resource that will be lost if not successfully transferred to younger generations. You become more deliberate about sharing your most valuable insights, ensuring that crucial survival information will persist beyond your individual lifetime. Your breeding opportunities continue, though at a reduced frequency compared to your prime years. The genetic legacy you've already established through multiple offspring means that reproductive success is no longer your primary focus. Instead, you concentrate on maximizing the survival chances of existing descendants by sharing environmental knowledge and navigation expertise that will benefit their long-term success. The relationships you've built throughout your life begin to shift as younger whales recognize your changing status. Where once they sought you out for guidance during dangerous situations, now they approach with a different kind of respect. They understand that your knowledge represents a finite resource, and they listen more intently to your calls, absorbing not just practical information, but the deeper wisdom that comes from surviving in the ocean for decades. Your acoustic communications become more deliberate, more focused. You no longer waste energy on casual exchanges or territorial displays. Instead, your calls carry concentrated information, warnings about shipping lanes that have shifted, reports of new krill concentrations discovered during recent travels, updates on changing current patterns that affect migration timing. Every vocalization serves a purpose, contributing to the collective intelligence that keeps your species alive. The ocean continues its relentless transformation around you. Ice shelves that provided familiar landmarks during your early years shrink and disappear, forcing adjustments to navigation routes that have guided whales for millennia. New shipping channels open through previously pristine waters, creating acoustic barriers that fragment traditional whale communication networks. You adapt to these changes, but each adjustment requires energy that becomes increasingly precious. Your hunting efficiency remains high despite your advancing age. The techniques you've perfected over decades compensate for any decrease in raw physical power. You read krill movements with the expertise of a master, positioning yourself for maximum success with minimal effort. Where younger whales might make multiple lunges to capture the same amount of prey, you achieve superior results with single, perfectly timed strikes. But the krill themselves are changing. The species compositions that sustained you throughout your life are shifting as warming waters alter the ocean's fundamental ecology. Traditional prey species move toward the poles, following temperature gradients that have remained stable for millions of years. New species appear in familiar feeding grounds, some edible, others toxic or nutritionally poor. You must constantly evaluate and adapt to these changes. The plastic pollution that first shocked you during your early independent travels has become a constant presence throughout your range. You've learned to recognize and avoid the most dangerous debris, but complete avoidance is impossible. Microplastics infiltrate the food chain at every level, from the smallest krill to the largest whales. Your body carries traces of human industrial activity in every cell, a chemical signature of the transformed ocean you've lived to see. Your migration timing becomes increasingly critical as environmental conditions become less predictable. The seasonal patterns that once guided whale movements with clockwork reliability now fluctuate unpredictably. Storms arrive weeks early or late. Prey distributions shift without warning, and traditional feeding areas sometimes lie barren when they should be teeming with life. Your experience provides crucial flexibility, allowing you to adjust routes and timing when younger whales might starve, waiting for conditions that no longer exist. The acoustic landscape of your youth has been permanently altered by the expansion of human ocean use. The deep, Clear calls that once carried unobstructed across thousands of miles now compete with engine noise, sonar pings, and industrial activity. You've adapted your communication techniques to penetrate this interference, but the effort required exhausts energy reserves that were once available for other activities. Your territorial claims become more symbolic than actively defended as your physical capabilities decline. Younger whales respect your established feeding areas more out of tradition than fear of confrontation. You still command prime locations during feeding seasons, but your authority derives from accumulated respect rather than the threat of physical dominance. This transition feels natural rather than diminished, an evolution of your role within whale society. The students you've mentored over the years begin achieving prominence within the whale community. Their success reflects your teaching abilities and validates the knowledge you've shared. Some have become teachers themselves, passing on techniques and information that originated with your innovations. Others have pioneered new feeding areas or navigation routes that build upon your foundational work. Your influence multiplies through their achievements. Deep water hunting becomes more challenging as your dive duration and depth capacity gradually decrease. The epic descents that once took you to abyssal feeding grounds now require more recovery time between attempts. You compensate by focusing on shallower prey concentrations that require less extreme physiological stress, maintaining adequate nutrition while acknowledging your changing capabilities. Your social interactions during breeding seasons shift toward advisory roles rather than active competition. Younger males still seek your counsel on courtship strategies and territorial negotiations, recognizing that your experience provides advantages that brute strength cannot match. You share insights about female preferences, seasonal timing, and competitive tactics that help them succeed where raw aggression would fail. The ocean's chemical composition has changed subtly but measurably during your lifetime. Increased acidity affects the shell formation of prey species, altering their nutritional value and availability. Heavy metal concentrations from industrial runoff accumulate in the food chain, reaching levels that would have been toxic to earlier generations. Your body has adapted to these changes, but the effort of processing contaminated food sources adds stress to already overtaxed systems. Your acoustic memory becomes a living archive of ocean history. You remember the sounds of environments that no longer exist, feeding grounds silenced by pollution, migration routes disrupted by development, whale populations that have vanished from entire regions. This sonic record of environmental change makes you a witness to planetary transformation that few creatures could document. Climate patterns that remained stable for your entire early life begin fluctuating with increasing violence. Storms intensify beyond historical precedents, creating survival challenges that test even your vast experience. Ocean currents shift their paths, disrupting the circulation patterns that transport nutrients and regulate temperatures. You navigate these changes by drawing on decades of accumulated knowledge, but each season brings unprecedented conditions that require real-time adaptation. Your offspring have scattered throughout the Pacific, establishing their own territories and continuing the genetic line you've contributed to whale evolution. Some have inherited your exceptional navigation abilities, others your acoustic talents or hunting innovations. Each represents a small victory against the environmental pressures that threaten your species' long-term survival. Their success justifies the energy you invested in reproduction during your prime years. The mentorship requests from younger whales intensify as they recognize that your accumulated wisdom represents an irreplaceable resource. They approach with increasing urgency, sensing that opportunities to learn from your experience are limited by natural cycles they cannot control. You respond to these requests with patience and generosity, understanding that knowledge transfer is perhaps your most important remaining contribution to whale society. Your exploration of the ocean's remotest regions continues, though at a more measured pace. The discoveries you make during these final journeys often prove more significant than those of your youth, as your experienced eye recognizes patterns and opportunities that inexperienced travelers would miss. New feeding areas, safe migration routes, and acoustic landmarks continue adding to the collective knowledge that guides whale movements across the Pacific. The physical demands of constant swimming and diving begin requiring more careful energy management. You develop more efficient movement patterns that minimize exertion while maintaining adequate speed for migration and hunting. Your massive body moves with the grace of absolute expertise, every motion calculated for maximum effectiveness. Observers might not notice the subtle changes in your swimming style, but you feel the difference in every stroke. Your acoustic range gradually decreases as the physical systems that produce your calls age along with the rest of your body. The deep bass notes that once carried across entire ocean basins now travel shorter distances, requiring closer proximity to maintain communication with distant whales. You adapt by positioning yourself more strategically during social interactions, ensuring that important messages reach their intended recipients despite reduced transmission power. The feeding grounds that have sustained you throughout your life show increasing signs of stress from multiple environmental pressures. Warming waters drive traditional prey species toward the poles, while pollution and acidification affect the productivity of marine ecosystems at their foundation. You witness these changes with the perspective of someone who remembers how these areas once functioned, providing crucial baseline data for understanding the scale of transformation. Your role as a cultural repository becomes increasingly important as older whales throughout your range face similar challenges. The acoustic traditions, navigation knowledge, and behavioral patterns that define whale civilization depend on successful transmission from experienced individuals to younger generations. You participate actively in this knowledge transfer, understanding that cultural extinction poses as great a threat as physical mortality. The breeding seasons of your final years bring different satisfactions than the competitive displays of youth or the productive partnerships of your prime. Now your presence serves more to maintain social stability and provide guidance to less experienced participants. Your massive size and authoritative calls help mediate disputes and establish the peaceful conditions necessary for successful mating activities. Your hunting strategies evolve to emphasize efficiency over quantity as your energy reserves become more precious. You focus on the richest krill concentrations, using your superior positioning skills to maximize nutritional return from each feeding attempt. The techniques you've perfected over decades allow you to maintain adequate body condition with less total food intake, compensating for decreased hunting frequency with improved success rates. The ocean's acoustic environment continues deteriorating as human activity expands throughout your range. Ship traffic increases year by year, creating noise pollution that interferes with whale communication on an unprecedented scale. You've learned to work around this interference, but the constant adaptation required exhausts mental energy that was once available for other activities. The ocean that was once alive with whale song now struggles to carry even the most urgent messages. Your territorial preferences shift toward areas that offer the best combination of food availability and acoustic clarity. Remote feeding grounds far from shipping lanes become increasingly valuable despite their distance from traditional whale gathering areas. You spend more time in these isolated locations, accepting reduced social interaction in exchange for the peace necessary for effective communication and hunting. The students you've taught over the years begin taking leadership roles within the whale community, implementing innovations and strategies that originated with your instruction. Their success reflects your teaching effectiveness and ensures that your knowledge will continue influencing whale behavior long after your direct participation ends. Some have become teachers themselves, creating a cascade of knowledge transfer that multiplies your impact across multiple generations. Your migration patterns become more selective as you prioritize energy conservation while maintaining access to essential resources. The epic journeys that once took you to every corner of the Pacific give way to more focused travels that target specific feeding areas or social gatherings. Your vast experience allows you to identify the most productive destinations without the extensive exploration that characterizes younger whales' movements. The chemical composition of your prey continues changing as industrial pollution and climate change alter the ocean's fundamental chemistry. Prey species carry increasing concentrations of toxins that your body must process and eliminate. Your metabolic systems, refined over decades of ocean living, handle these challenges effectively, but the additional processing load reduces the energy available for other activities. Your acoustic signature becomes a recognized landmark within the whale community. Other whales use your calls as reference points for navigation and timing, knowing that your presence in specific areas indicates favorable conditions for feeding or migration. This role as a living acoustic beacon provides purpose and maintains your relevance within whale society, even as your physical capabilities gradually decline. The deep satisfaction of a life fully lived permeates your daily activities. You've survived challenges that claimed many contemporaries, contributed significantly to your species' genetic diversity and cultural knowledge, and helped guide younger generations through unprecedented environmental changes. Every day continues to offer opportunities for meaningful contribution to the whale community's collective welfare. Your body, despite its massive size and apparent durability, shows increasing signs of the decades you've spent in the ocean's demanding environment. Scars from encounters with ships, predators, and underwater obstacles tell the story of a life lived fully in one of Earth's most challenging environments. Your movements remain graceful and effective, but the constant swimming and diving that characterize whale existence exact their toll on even the most robust individuals. The transformation of your home ocean accelerates around you. Ice caps that provided familiar landmarks throughout your life continue shrinking, altering current patterns and weather systems that have remained stable for millennia. New shipping routes open through previously pristine waters, bringing noise pollution and collision risks to areas that once offered refuge from human activity. You adapt to these changes with the flexibility that has sustained you throughout your life, but each adjustment requires precious energy. Your influence on whale culture reaches its peak as younger individuals throughout the Pacific carry forward innovations and knowledge that originated with your contributions. Navigation techniques, hunting strategies, and communication methods that you developed or refined have become standard practices within the whale community. Your legacy lives not just in your genetic contributions, but in the behavioral traditions that will guide your species for generations to come. The ocean that has been your home for decades continues its relentless transformation, but your adaptation to changing conditions ensures that your final years remain productive and meaningful. You've witnessed the planet's most dramatic environmental shifts firsthand, providing perspective that few creatures could offer. Your survival through these changes represents both personal achievement and species-level success, demonstrating the resilience that has allowed whales to thrive in Earth's oceans for millions of years. The seasons blur together now, each migration blending into the next as your body begins to show the wear of countless journeys across the Pacific. Your movements remain powerful, but there's a deliberateness to them that wasn't there before. Every stroke is calculated, every dive planned with the precision that comes from understanding your limits. You're still massive, still formidable, but the endless ocean has finally begun to extract its price. Your hunting patterns shift toward conservation. Where once you might have pursued scattered krill across miles of open water, now you wait for the densest concentrations, striking with surgical precision when conditions are perfect. Your success rate remains high, perhaps higher than ever, but the frequency of your hunts decreases. Quality over quantity becomes your survival strategy as energy grows more precious with each passing season. The younger whales who seek your guidance sense something different in your calls. There's an urgency to their requests now, as if they understand that opportunities to learn from your accumulated wisdom are becoming finite. They approach with a reverence that goes beyond the respect you've always commanded, listening more intently to every acoustic lesson you share. Your vocal range begins to show subtle changes that only the most perceptive listeners notice. The deep bass notes that once carried your voice across entire ocean basins now require more effort to produce, and their transmission distance gradually decreases. You compensate by choosing your communications more carefully, making every call count when you need to reach distant whales or coordinate with feeding groups. The breeding grounds still welcome your presence, though your role has evolved from active competitor to respected elder. Younger males approach you for advice on courtship strategies and territorial negotiations, recognizing that your experience provides advantages no amount of size or strength can match. Your offspring from previous seasons have spread throughout the Pacific, some already beginning their own reproductive careers. Navigation becomes more challenging as familiar landmarks disappear or change beyond recognition. Ice formations that served as waypoints for decades melt away completely, forcing you to rely more heavily on magnetic fields and deep water acoustic signatures. Your mental maps of the ocean floor, built over years of careful observation, become increasingly valuable as surface references vanish. The krill populations you've depended on throughout your life continue their climate-driven migrations toward the poles. Traditional feeding grounds sometimes lie empty when they should be teeming with life, forcing last-minute route changes that tax your energy reserves. Your ability to adapt to these shifting conditions separates you from younger whales who lack the flexibility that comes from experiencing multiple environmental cycles. Pollution levels in your tissues reach concentrations that would have been lethal to whales from earlier generations, but your body has adapted to process these contaminants over decades of gradual exposure. The effort required for this constant detoxification adds another burden to systems already stressed by age and environmental change. You've become a living repository of the ocean's chemical history, your cells carrying traces of every industrial expansion, every oil spill, every new form of contamination introduced during your lifetime. Your acoustic memory serves as an archive of vanished soundscapes. You remember feeding grounds that are now silent, migration routes disrupted by shipping traffic, whale populations that once filled entire regions with their calls. This sonic record of environmental change makes you a witness to planetary transformation on a scale few living creatures could document. When you vocalize now, younger whales sometimes detect echoes of acoustic environments they've never experienced. The mentorship relationships that have defined much of your adult life take on new intensity as both you and your students recognize the finite nature of these educational opportunities. Your teaching becomes more focused, concentrating on the most crucial survival skills rather than the comprehensive education you once provided. Every lesson carries the weight of knowledge that might not be available from any other source. Your exploration of remote ocean regions continues, though at a more measured pace that acknowledges your changing capabilities. The discoveries you make during these final journeys often prove more significant than those of your youth, as your experienced eye recognizes patterns and opportunities that inexperienced travelers would overlook. New feeding areas, safe migration corridors, and acoustic landmarks continue adding to the collective knowledge that guides whale movements across the Pacific. Deep water hunting requires increasingly careful energy management as your dive duration and maximum depth gradually decrease. You develop more efficient descent patterns that minimize oxygen consumption while still reaching profitable feeding depths. The epic dives that once took you to abyssal hunting grounds now demand longer recovery periods, but your targeting skills have improved enough to maintain adequate nutrition despite reduced hunting frequency. Social interactions during feeding seasons shift toward advisory roles rather than direct competition for territory or resources. Your massive size still commands respect, but your authority now derives more from accumulated wisdom than physical intimidation. Younger whales seek your approval for feeding strategies and territorial arrangements, recognizing that your experience provides insights they cannot obtain elsewhere. The ocean's chemical composition continues evolving in ways that challenge your species' adaptive capabilities. Increasing acidity affects the shell development of key prey species, altering their nutritional value and availability patterns. Heavy metals and industrial toxins accumulate in the food chain at concentrations that test even your robust detoxification systems. You've survived these changes through gradual adaptation, but each new contamination source adds stress to already overtaxed biological processes. Your offspring have established themselves throughout the Pacific, some achieving prominence within their own regional whale communities. Their success validates the genetic contributions you've made to your species' ongoing evolution. Several have inherited your exceptional navigation abilities, others your acoustic talents or innovative hunting techniques. Each represents a victory against the environmental pressures that threaten whale populations throughout their range. The breeding seasons of your later years bring different satisfactions than the competitive displays of youth or the productive partnerships of your prime. Your presence now serves more to maintain social stability and provide guidance to less experienced participants. Your calls help mediate disputes between competing males and establish the peaceful conditions necessary for successful courtship activities. Migration timing becomes critical as environmental patterns grow increasingly unpredictable. Seasonal cycles that remained stable for millennia now fluctuate wildly, with storms arriving weeks early or late, temperature changes happening faster than prey species can adapt, and traditional food sources appearing in unexpected locations or failing to appear at all. Your accumulated experience provides crucial flexibility when rigid adherence to historical patterns would result in starvation. The acoustic landscape of your range has been permanently transformed by expanding human ocean use. Shipping lanes that were minor annoyances during your youth now carry traffic volumes that create constant background noise throughout major migration corridors. Military sonar, industrial activity, and recreational boating add layers of interference that make long-distance communication increasingly difficult. You've learned to work around this acoustic pollution, but the constant adaptation exhausts energy that was once available for other activities. Your territorial claims become more symbolic than actively defended, as direct confrontation requires energy you prefer to conserve for essential activities. Younger whales respect your established feeding areas more out of tradition and social protocol than fear of physical retaliation. This transition feels natural rather than diminished, an evolution of your role within whale society that emphasizes influence over force. The students you've taught over decades begin achieving leadership positions within the broader whale community. Their innovations in hunting technique, navigation strategy, and social cooperation often build upon foundations you provided during their formative years. Some have become teachers themselves, creating cascading knowledge transfer that multiplies your influence across multiple generations. Your legacy extends far beyond your direct interactions, shaping whale culture in ways that will persist long after your individual contributions end. Your body's response to the constant physical demands of whale life begins requiring more strategic energy allocation. Swimming efficiency becomes paramount as you develop movement patterns that minimize exertion while maintaining adequate speed for essential activities. Your massive frame moves with the grace of absolute expertise, every motion calculated for maximum effectiveness with minimum energy expenditure. The feeding grounds that sustained you throughout your life show accelerating signs of ecosystem stress from multiple converging pressures. Warming waters drive traditional prey species beyond their historical ranges, while ocean acidification affects productivity at the most fundamental levels of the marine food web. Pollution and overfishing by human activities remove key species from ecological relationships that took millions of years to evolve. You witness these changes with the perspective of someone who remembers how these systems once functioned. Your role as a cultural repository becomes increasingly critical as the whale community faces challenges that have no precedent in evolutionary history. Traditional behaviors and migration patterns may no longer provide adequate responses to rapidly changing environmental conditions. The knowledge you carry, accumulated through decades of adaptation and innovation, represents a crucial resource for species-level survival strategies. Hunting success requires increasingly sophisticated prey evaluation as the nutritional quality and availability of traditional food sources continues declining. You've learned to recognize subtle indicators that distinguish healthy krill populations from those stressed by environmental change or contamination. Your feeding efficiency depends more on this discrimination ability than on the raw capture capacity that characterized your younger years. The ocean's thermal structure shifts in ways that affect everything from current patterns to prey distribution. Temperature gradients that provided reliable navigation references throughout your life now fluctuate unpredictably, requiring constant recalibration of your environmental awareness systems. Deep water temperatures raise enough to alter the vertical migration patterns of prey species, forcing adjustments to hunting strategies that took decades to perfect. Your acoustic signature becomes a recognized cultural landmark within the Pacific whale community. Other whales time their migrations and feeding activities partly based on your known presence in specific areas, understanding that your location choices reflect environmental assessments they can trust. This role as a living reference point provides ongoing purpose and maintains your relevance within whale society, even as your direct participation in competitive activities decreases. The mentorship requests you receive become more urgent as younger whales recognize the finite nature of opportunities to access your accumulated wisdom. They approach with questions that go beyond basic survival skills, seeking insights into adaptation strategies for unprecedented environmental challenges. Your responses draw on experiences that span environmental changes no previous whale generation has witnessed. Your navigation abilities reach their peak sophistication as decades of experience combine with increasingly challenging environmental conditions. You've learned to read subtle magnetic field variations, interpret the behavior patterns of migrating bird species, and use deep water acoustic signatures that most whales never detect. These skills prove invaluable as traditional landmarks disappear and historical migration routes become unreliable. The transformation of your home ocean accelerates beyond what any previous whale generation experienced. Entire ecosystems shift their geographic ranges within single seasons, creating temporary abundance in some areas while leaving others barren. Your survival depends on real-time adaptation to conditions that change faster than evolutionary processes can accommodate through genetic modification. Social dynamics within the whale community evolve as environmental pressures force increased cooperation between individuals who might historically have maintained greater independence. Your experience in forming temporary alliances and sharing resources becomes a model for younger whales learning to navigate these new social requirements. The solitary lifestyle that characterized much of your adult life gradually gives way to more collaborative approaches to survival challenges. Your breeding legacy continues expanding as offspring from various seasons reach reproductive maturity and begin contributing their own genetic material to the whale population. Some have inherited your exceptional adaptability, others your acoustic abilities or innovative problem-solving skills. Each successful reproduction represents a victory against the environmental pressures that threaten whale populations throughout the Pacific. The physical signs of your lengthy ocean residence become more pronounced as decades of constant swimming, diving, and hunting exact their cumulative toll. Scars from encounters with ships, fishing gear, and natural hazards tell the story of a life lived fully in one of Earth's most demanding environments. Your movements remain graceful and effective, but they carry the measured quality that comes from understanding the importance of energy conservation. Your influence on whale culture reaches its maximum extent as innovations and techniques you developed decades earlier become standard practices throughout the Pacific whale community. Navigation methods, communication strategies, and hunting approaches that originated with your contributions now guide whale behavior across thousands of miles of ocean. Your cultural legacy may prove more significant than your genetic contributions to species survival. The krill populations that form the foundation of your food web continue their climate-driven evolution, with new species appearing in traditional feeding areas, while familiar ones thus disappear entirely. Your ability to evaluate and exploit these changing prey communities becomes crucial for maintaining adequate nutrition as the ocean's biological productivity shifts to match new environmental conditions. Your acoustic range gradually decreases as the biological systems responsible for sound production age along with the rest of your body. Long-distance communication requires more energy and yields diminishing returns, forcing you to rely more heavily on closer range interactions and strategic positioning during social gatherings. You adapt by making your communications more efficient and meaningful, ensuring that reduced quantity doesn't compromise essential information transfer. The deep satisfaction of a life fully engaged with the ocean's challenges and opportunities permeates your daily activities. You've not only survived environmental changes that claimed many contemporaries, but actively contributed to your species' ongoing adaptation to unprecedented conditions. Your knowledge, experience, and genetic legacy will continue influencing whale society long after your direct participation ends. The ocean that has been your home for decades continues its relentless transformation, but your successful adaptation to these changes demonstrates the resilience that has allowed whales to thrive in Earth's seas for millions of years. You've witnessed and survived the most dramatic environmental shifts in planetary history, providing a living example of successful adaptation that guides younger generations facing even greater challenges ahead. From that first breath at the surface as a helpless calf to your final years as a master of the deep, you've lived the complete arc of a fin whale's existence. You've survived orca attacks, ship strikes, and storms that could crush mountains. You've adapted to an ocean transformed by climate change and human activity, watching familiar feeding grounds disappear while pioneering new routes through waters your ancestors never knew. You've passed on your knowledge to dozens of younger whales, ensuring that the wisdom earned through decades of survival continues guiding your species long after your voice falls silent. Your body carries the chemical signature of a planet in transition. Every industrial expansion, every oil spill, every new form of contamination that entered the ocean during your lifetime. But you've endured it all, becoming not just a survivor, but a teacher, a navigator, and a living archive of environmental change that few creatures could document. Your offspring swim throughout the Pacific, carrying forward the genetic legacy that enabled your success. The hunting techniques you pioneered, the migration routes you discovered, the acoustic innovations you developed, all of it has become part of whale culture, shaping how your species adapts to an ever-changing world. Here you can find the next video. Until then, see you soon.